Tuesday, June 11th, 2013, Hyundai Apartments, Gyeongju, South Korea, at 5:55 p.m. I've never done a blog post like this before. First of all, I'm a very slow learner when it comes to technology, and I just always like to write the old-fashioned way, I guess. Although now I can no longer do that. If you read my last post, you know that I've been having wrist problems. And last night it got so painful that for the next few days at least, I'm going to stop using my right hand completely. And that means only typing with one hand, which I tried yesterday, and it was a nightmare. So that means to forego any major typing projects. So I found a way to do a video blog. Yeah, the pain is pretty bad. But honestly, I'm also pretty scared. I mean, I've been wanting to be a writer since I was 12, and just considering that anything could happen to my dominant hand, it really freaks me out. I mean, writing is all that I do pretty much. I mean, not everything I do, but it's always been a very important part of my life. It's like, tell me I can't write, it's like I can't breathe. Okay, yeah, that's very dramatic, but anyway. And I mean, I know that's an irrational fear. I mean, I know what this is. It's a ganglion cyst, and it's not life-threatening. I'm not going to lose my hand. But fears are rarely rational. Funny thing is, fear is nothing but a protection mechanism. We are afraid of what we perceive to be threatening, which sounds logical, but I use the word perceive, not what is a threat. And if having cone dystrophy has taught me anything, it is that what we perceive to be reality is so different from what actually is reality. There are so many fears that people have that just are not threatening. I mean, what is the most common fear among people? Public speaking, which isn't threatening at all. Well, unless you're a politician, of course. So, I mean, I know nothing is going to happen to my right hand, but I am still a little afraid that something will happen to it. I kind of feel like Jaime Lannister. Oh, and speaking of Game of Thrones, that was one of the most anticlimactic season finales of any show I have ever seen. Oh my gosh, it was such a letdown. But anyway, I'm not going to get on that very much more. So the pain just got so bad yesterday. So I called my co-teacher, Mrs. Go, and I asked her to go to a doctor with me. Now, I've actually been to doctors by myself quite a few times now. Those are always fun experiences. Multiple times I had to get my Korean friend, Dewan, who can speak fluent English and Korean, to explain things. But since I was basically planning on going to a doctor and saying, just give me pain meds, I thought it would be wise to have a Korean person actually there to sort of tell them what's going on. I mean, Well, see, and what is going on is that um, I have a wrist doctor in America who actually was the man who surgically removed the cyst in my left hand, or my left wrist, and I would just feel more comfortable if he was the one who took care of it. So I'm just going to do my best to survive the next month, and when I get back to America, do whatever needs to be done to get better before grad school. And so I explained all this to Mrs. Go, and she told me, "Oh, I'm too busy to take you to a doctor tomorrow." And I said, "Okay, well, I'll just figure something out." And so I went to my host sister, Youngju, who translated a very few simple statements into Korean for me on a piece of paper, and completely planned that today I would go through school only using my left hand, and then after school I would go to see a doctor by myself and hand him the piece of paper. It was all set and firm in my mind. I get in class this morning, and Mrs. Go, first she takes my hand and is all, "Oh, is it okay, Alyssa?" And she's so grandmotherly and so sweet. I know she loves me and she does everything she can to help me. But then she drops this, "Oh, second period, Mr. Kim will take you to hospital." I'm like, "What?" She wanted him to take me to an orthopedic doctor so that he could fix my wrist. And I'm just like, "Mrs. Go, I don't want them to fix my wrist. I just want them to give me pain medicine. Just pain medicine, nothing else." And she's like, "Oh, okay, but so you go today, this morning." And I'm like, "Okay, sure, Miss Go. 감사합니다." And then I'm waiting in the Gangmushil for Mr. Kim to finish his first period class, and I start hearing this very serious discussion out by the vice principal's desk. It's the vice principal, about 5 teachers, including Mrs. Go, and the principal. And I sort of look over and I hear the name Allison at least 3 times, and I'm like, "Oh, great, they're talking about me." Actually, that's something all ETAs just have to get used to, especially if they do not understand very much Korean. You get talked about, and most of the time it's in front of you, and you just have no idea what's being said about you. You just have to pray that whatever it is, it's something positive. I mean, that's really all you can do. And most of the time, when it happens, I'm too scared to go up and say, "Hey guys, what are you talking about me?" So it's just something you get used to. Like, yeah, they're talking about me again. Woohoo! And then Mr. Kim finally came to take me to the hospital. Mr. Kim is one of the other English co-teachers, not my main one, that's Mrs. Go. And before he took me out to his car, we went to the principal, just to bow and tell him we were leaving. And he and the vice principal were there. And I love my vice principal. Okay, she is so sassy and fashionable, and she laughs all the time. And you just hear it echoing in the Gangmushil. I'll just be working, doing a lesson plan, I'll focus, and I'll just hear ha 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 ha, and it's like, oh, it makes me smile, and I have no idea why she's laughing, but it's very infectious. And the second she sees me and knows that I'm about to go to the hospital, she says, "Oh, Allison, acupuncture." No. I mean, I tried to be very polite and diplomatic about it, because honestly, I do think there is there is reason to acupuncture, and it is helpful for many people. But I am very afraid of needles. Shots still petrify me to this day. And I think acupuncture would do me more harm than good because I would just spend so much time worrying about it and stressing over it. So I just explained, oh, well, acupuncture is great, but I'm just too terrified for it to help me. And she laughed at me with that answer, which I thought was nice. Well, and she and the principal were very concerned, so the teachers at my school, they're all looking out for me. Of course, when Mr. Kim actually takes me to the hospital, I'm completely nervous. I mean, I've been stressing over my wrist and hand for the last 2 weeks, and it's kind of taking a toll, and I was just so awkward. And the receptionist was just, it felt like such an interrogation. They're saying, what's your phone number? And, I've had this same phone number since September, and I can't remember it, and I can't remember my address, and I feel so stupid. And then I spill hot coffee on myself. That was good. Apparently, losing the ability of one hand makes you even more clumsy than you were to begin with. And then I go into a elderly Korean-speaking doctor, and he proceeds to, prod and poke my wrist, bending it backwards and forward. I'm doing it with my wrist that's not in excruciating pain, and I'm just sitting there going, because it's incredibly painful. And he asked when the pain started, what I plan to do, and then he just looks very calmly at me, and after he listens to Mr. Kim's translations, and he says, injection. No, this is not what I asked for. And then I start hearing all of these people saying, Alison, and I'm, what's going on? And Mr. Kim takes me to see another doctor who actually speaks a reasonable amount of English, which I was surprised about. And he does the same thing that the previous doctor did, like bending my wrist backwards and forwards and prodding it and making me squirm in pain. And then he asks the same questions, but thankfully he understood what was going on and prescribed me some pain medication. He gave me 3 days worth, and then I go back, and depending on how it worked, he'll give me more or switch to another kind. So that worked out. And so I went back to school and did the rest of my lessons. So that was how that went. Oh. I have not mentioned my students lately. There has been something on my mind regarding them over the last few weeks. A quite unfortunate event happened at Sundok Junhakyo, a Sundok Girls Middle School, and one of my students was beaten up. I did not see it. One of the teachers told me, and she was beaten up so badly that she had to go to the hospital. And I feel really bad for her. I'm sorry it happened, but she is doing better now, and she's okay. I was not told who was involved or what happened to them, but I have noticed that some of my students are just not there anymore in my classes, and that makes me very sad. And particularly one student who I'm missing. I think her name is Yerin. I don't see her anymore, and Yerim, you hear her before you see her. She is, without a doubt, my loudest student. In all honesty, she is completely disrespectful. She is so challenging to authority, and she's just one of those students that when you're having a rough day and you go into your classroom and you see her sitting there in the desk, you just go, oh, great, not Yadrim. And when I first started teaching at Sumdok Junhakyo and she was one of my students, she was a constant headache. But her assertiveness and her exuberance became to be one of the things that I grew to love her for. I mean, there was one day that I came into the classroom and she said Annyeong, which Annyeong is hello in Korean. She said Annyeong, and you know me, I'm the English teacher. I say hello, Annyeong, hello, Annyeong, hello, Annyeong, Korean, and you know, she is obviously one of my lower level students, but my high level students, they can talk English to me for hours on end, but most of them are so shy that they wouldn't. But Yerim, she is not shy at all. She's just out there and she gets in your face, and I really responded to that, and I thought it was a great aspect about her. But I haven't seen her since before that terrible incident happened. And I know she has a lot of challenges in her life. I think she's an orphan, that her mother abandoned her when she was born. If a woman in Korea gets pregnant before marriage, it's far more worse than if it happens in America, because they are completely shunned from society and become pariahs, which is extremely unfortunate because that is why there is such a more prevalent amount of babies who are abandoned and are raised by grandfathers or in an orphanage. And almost all of my problem students, or my students who act out in class, they're girls who were abandoned when they were babies, and they have a lot of challenges to go through. And I really hope that these girls, both the ones who are still in my school and the ones who were expelled, I really hope they find their way and that they end up to be okay. But in a lighter note, I have had some good experiences lately. Let's see. Last week, I did a low-level class on description of people, and I started that lesson with showing pictures of famous people and asking, who is this, or in Korean, nugu. And I showed a picture of President George W. Bush, just wanted to see if they would know who that is. And when I asked them, a girl in the front row raises her hand and screams at the top of her lungs, Michael Jackson! I just said, no. But she was so sure, and it was so hysterical. And there was another great moment today. I'm doing performance assessments right now, and that is just testing their ability, obviously, in English, and the grade I give them will be part of their final grades. Basically, I interview the students one by one, ask them 3 questions in English, and they respond. And when they do the interview, we're in this little office annex in my classroom that has a door, and the rest of the students are out in the major classroom, and they are watching a movie. And at the right before class was starting yesterday, I was writing the names of my students to show the order in which I wanted them to come to the little office. And I was writing their English alphabet. Um, and as I was doing this, two of my students came into the classroom and they just look at me and they're like saying, "Teacher, what are you doing?" And one of them just came up and grabbed my hand that was holding the marker and helped guide it for me, like to show me the right way to form these Hangul letters. It was really funny and very sweet and considerate, but it just really surprised me. I was like, whoa. You know, there are things that I do not like about doing performance assessments. I have 19 classes, and usually I teach 2 lessons. One of them is a low-level lesson for my Washington and Ottawa classes, the lower-level classes, and then I teach a high-level lesson for my London classes and my Canberra classes. And even though I teach 2 lessons per week, that's still a lot of repetition. It's about 9 classes per lesson a week, and that's a lot of repetition. But when I do performance assessments, I do the same exact thing every day for about 3 weeks. It gets so boring. I mean, I can remember when I was doing it last semester, I would be asking these questions, and I would, like, halfway through, I would have no sense of what I was saying. And then I'd hear the girl respond to me, and then I should be listening to this, shouldn't I? So tedious. But before I become that lethargic zombie, I do enjoy having one-on-one contact with my students. That is something I rarely get to do with them because I have such big classes. I mean, even if I run into them in Gyeongju, which is something that happens on a regular basis, they're with family or friends. I rarely ever interact with them alone. But doing performance assessments, not only do I see them alone, but I get to see a little bit of their personality shown in the different ways they answer my questions. Today, when I asked one of my students, what does your best friend look like, she answered, like a person. Can't argue with that. You just can't. Another girl said, a hamster. That is actually a very common response in Korea. I mean, not just a hamster, but to describe people like animals. In America, we usually think of that as something as offensive, but in Korea, it really isn't. You know, in America, if you describe someone, especially if they're African American, if you compare them to a monkey, it is a horrible racial slur. They do that all the time in Korea, and you know, we're supposed to be telling them about American culture, so we're like, no, don't do it, because if they visit America and they say that, they'll get beaten up. Let's see. Oh yeah, I had one student today that I interviewed. She's a first year, so in America she'd be a 6th grader, and she is just so cute. And you could just tell she was thinking so hard. Like, she put her finger here and here, and what's okay, which is something Koreans say when they're thinking really hard. And I just wanted to give her a hug. It was so sweet. Yeah, I'm really going to miss my students. They are so great, and even at the age they are now, they are all smarter than me. I mean, just think about how much they study. I mean, it's ridiculous. The middle schoolers study more than I ever did in college, and my parents know that I did not slack off in college. I studied more than anyone had right to, but my middle schoolers still study more than I ever did, and it makes me feel like an idiot. Really does. Spring is ending here, and it's quickly becoming summer. weather is starting to look very similar to the weather when I first got here in early July. My first main impression of Korea was the really thick fog and the mountains wrapped in this beautiful, eerie mist, and just I'm starting to see that again, and it's both sad and happy. The end is coming. Well, I think that's about it for today. I'm probably going to be posting like this in the near future, unless the pain completely subsides. So, I hope you enjoyed my first video post. 안녕히 계세요, which is Korean for goodbye.